The Resident Evil Netflix series is surprisingly really good, and here's why. I just finished watching all 8 episodes, and now I want to express my final opinions. Does this series live up to the legacy of the Resident Evil franchise, or is it a massive disappointment like many people are claiming it to be? First, I'll talk about the good, then the bad, and I'll talk about spoilers at the end of the video. Here is my brutally honest review of Netflix's Resident Evil. Okay, so let's start off with the good. I just want to say that the story was really well done. It had some very emotional moments and twists, and a lot of the emotional moments between the characters actually worked really well, especially the dynamic between the sisters. So a lot of people were scared that this series was going to be a end of the world type series, but that's not really the case. The environments in this series still feel very much like Resident Evil. I really liked how this series dove a lot more into family connections rather than just focusing on BOWs. But I think the relationships between all of the characters was very believable. This series felt more like a psychological series rather than what we're used to in the games, because it's a completely different cast, and rather than just focusing on giant monsters 24/7, the series actually dives into the psychological aspects of these characters. I also want to say that the music is absolutely amazing. I really like the soundtrack in this series. During the action or the horror sequences, the music was intense. The characters were all absolutely amazing. The actor who played Albert Wesker did such a good job, and there is a really funny scene that actually made me laugh out loud, which I'll talk about in the spoiler section. The Wesker daughters' acting was absolutely incredible. Their whole dynamic and complicated relationship really helped push the story in a different direction. When the show was first announced, all I heard was Wesker daughters moved to New Raccoon City, and I was like, this sounds like absolute trash. And I gotta say, Jade is a really likable character, and this is another very important aspect that I want to talk about. Jade is a very likable character because I found her relatable. She was a very supporting character to her sister. She wanted nothing but the best for the people around her, but the people around her saw a different perspective of Jade. And the reason why I say she's relatable is because she is the perfect example of a good person who accidentally does bad things. She is a person with good intentions but makes the wrong decisions. I feel like we're all good people, but in the past we've made the wrong decisions that maybe hurt the people around us. Maybe you say the wrong thing, maybe you do the wrong thing. Maybe your intentions were good and you just want to make people laugh, but in turn you ended up hurting someone's feelings. Nothing ever felt forced, and it didn't feel like the characters were doing something just for the sake of doing it for the story. I thought that this series would be some family drama comedy like the way Lance described it in an interview.
What I loved about it was that it was this great kind of family, it sounds weird, but it's a great family drama and this great like apocalyptic action horror show.
This show definitely has a lot of drama, but it's really because of Umbrella. In my opinion, this is the best live action adaptation of Umbrella that we've gotten so far. It really shows how far they are willing to go in order to manipulate the people, kill their own people, kill citizens, and essentially take over the world by putting humans in a simulation. It was also really cool how the series covers a lot of modern topics that I need to mention here. This series covers things like mental health and bullying. Also, can I say that the CGI is incredible in this series? Way better than Welcome to Raccoon City. There is a very big creature at the end of the series, which I'll talk about in spoilers. The cinematography is incredible. It really holds up for a Netflix series. The budget was definitely a lot higher than expected. Alright, but now we need to talk about the bad. The number one issue that I noticed is the show starts off really slow. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because by the end of the series, everything comes full circle and it all starts to make sense. So if you haven't seen this series yet and you feel like it's starting off slow, it is meant to be that way. Keep in mind, even though we have Albert Wesker in this series, the daughters are the true main characters. This series is mostly revolved around them. The next thing that I have a problem with in this series is it doesn't really feel like Resident Evil until episode 4 and beyond. In the first 4 episodes, we obviously see zombies and some of the creatures, but those really intense moments where a character's life really feels at stake, those moments don't happen until episode 4 and after. I know a lot of people are like, the whole series doesn't feel like Resident Evil. We had moments where characters were solving puzzles. We had the big creatures, we had the zombies, we had the character drama. Okay, so another problem that I have with this series is they really could have used more BOWs. Some creatures I won't talk about until spoilers, but we of course got Lickers and the giant spider, which looked really creepy, but I feel like we could have gotten more because one standout in the Resident Evil franchise is all of the big creatures, and I wish they just would have used more of them from the games, but I will say the ones that we got were definitely really terrifying. And I would say the last thing that I had a problem with is the Lickers specifically were very underutilized, but I just feel like the Lickers specifically were very underutilized because they are a super iconic enemy. But those are the good, those are the bad, and now we're going to talk about spoilers. This is where I'm going to express all of my thoughts and talk about specific moments. Number 1, Dr. Salvador. So again, this isn't Dr. Salvador like the exact one from Resident Evil 4. It's just a dude wearing, you know, his mask and he has a chainsaw. And this scene was pretty brutal. I mean, he jabbed the chainsaw into a dude's back. That was extremely brutal. So Dr. Salvador, or the chainsaw dude, was actually really cool and quite intimidating, so I really liked how they portrayed this character. Also, in episode 4, one of my favorite scenes was the action sequence where Jade and the umbrella guy are escaping the facility. That whole action sequence with the umbrella dude was easily one of my favorite scenes out of the entire series. And I don't know if anybody caught it, but a lot of the moves that he was doing were the same moves that Leon was doing in that hallway scene in Resident Evil Vendetta. I feel like this was just a live action version and I enjoyed every second of it. Also in episode 5, I really liked that puzzle sequence in the house with the daughters. And the whole house was essentially a puzzle. That was really cool. Also, can we talk about the fact that they literally played Moonlight Sonata from the first Resident Evil? Also in episode 5, I liked how they found a dog whistle, which was later used as a puzzle item, which also is another Resident Evil 1 reference. Also, that scene with Lisa Trevor was really cool. But episode 7 and 8 is where things really kick off. In episode 7, we finally see the Wesker that we know from Resident Evil 5. Before Wesker died in Resident Evil 5 all the way back in 2009, Wesker made clones of himself in 2005. So when Wesker died in 2009 at the volcano, there were other clones of Wesker still alive. And so the main Wesker that we see in the series isn't the actual Wesker that we know. It's like an alternate personality Wesker. So there was a Wesker clone in the series called Bert. Literally my favorite scene out of the entire series, and the same scene that made me laugh out loud, was when he looked at the Wesker daughters and he was like, oh, they have unlimited breadsticks? That scene was genuinely funny. Also, the character of Evelyn is very interesting. So Evelyn Marcus is the daughter of James Marcus, the dude from Resident Evil 0. We also got to see the giant alligator, which again, the CG work looks amazing. There was also a scene with one of the Wesker clones that really stood out to me. And the quote was, "We should all do our best in a world where it's way too easy to do your worst." How are people not giving this show credit for some amazing quotes like that? And at the very end of the entire series, we see Jade open up the note that her father gave her, and what do you know? On the note it says Ada Wong. But I'm going to give the Resident Evil Netflix series a final verdict of 7 out of 10. This is definitely the best live action adaptation that we've gotten so far. But now I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and until next time.